Hi guys, Glader here. Today I'm here to tell you about typesafe.http.net. It's a library that I've recently written, and hopefully it's going to change the way that you make service calls to web servers in .net. You can use it with REST, just pure HTTP, web, whatever you want to do. We're going to hop right into it, but if you want to learn more about this and what it does and how to use it, go ahead and hop over to this repository. The link's going to be in the description. Basically, it's similar to Retrofit, which is an Android library that allows you to annotate types and create type-safe web. And I've got a bit of documentation here that covers a lot of the use cases and how to do it and how to prepare your services, or the interfaces you're going to use to call your services. Now that might sound weird, so let's just jump right into it. I have an example. It's a sample, and it's going to be available in the repository probably before you see this video. So first, let's take a look at the models. This is just some random nonsense I came up with. We've got a request model that includes some sort of string name. We have a response model that contains a power and a string identifier. And over here I have an ASP application. Now I can't stress enough that you do not need to use ASP to use typesafe.http.net. It's not a requirement. It can communicate with any web service. But we've got a basically default project for ASP except for this controller. We have a method called getPowerLevel, which just checks this dictionary to see if we have a specific name, and if we do, we send the response model with a new GUID. Again, it's just some nonsense for this demo. It doesn't mean anything. And a power level. And I think that power level right there is a little incorrect, because my power level is over 9,000. Welcome to early 2000s memes. Alright, let's hop right in. And I've got a .NET Core application, and we've got an asynchronous method prepared so that we can do async. Typesafe.http.net only works asynchronously at the moment. It's not like it's hard to make it work synchronously, it's just that I would really, you should be using async at this point, because you can't be waiting around for web requests in a .NET application, no matter what thread you're on. So how do we do it? How do we use it? Well, first, you need to search on GitHub, typesafe.http.net, or not GitHub, sorry, NuGet, and you'll see a lot of these libraries. Don't be afraid of them. I'm going to go over what these are real quick. The metadata library contains attributes or annotations, whatever you want to call them if you're from the Java space. We're going to need those to prepare our service interface. We'll need the core of the library so that we can actually run this. And I don't know if I showed you, but these are JSON models, so we'll also need a JSON serializer. This library has been designed to be extendable, configurable, so you can use any JSON serializer you like. However, you'll have to implement the API yourself, which isn't that difficult, or you can open up an issue on GitHub, and I'll do it as well. And the same for client implementations. Right now, I only have an implementation for the .NET HTTP client. If you want to use different HTTP clients, go ahead and open up an issue on GitHub. I'll add them to the project and they'll be available. Or you can do it yourself. It's extendable. For example, go take a look at the HTTP client project to see how I've done that. The only library you probably won't be including unless you're doing any of that custom stuff is the API library. At least directly, because it's referenced by these other projects. So now that we have these, especially the JSON serializer, which we're going to need for our models, I'm going to support protobuf in the future, and any other serializer anybody likes, I'll go ahead and add support for that. You just let me know. Now that we have all that, we want to communicate with our server. So we're going to need an interface. We'll call it example HTTP service. And if you saw, we were returning a response model. The name of the method does not have to be the same. And it was sending, and we want to send a request model. So that's our interface right now. It's very basic, but we should be able to communicate with this if the world was magical, but it's not. So we need to annotate some information here. We need to tell it that this is going to be at API/test. That's where it is. If you're not familiar with ASP, that's what this part means, but this is not an ASP demo or tutorial. So we're going to ignore that for now. So now we're saying, all right, we want to send this post to this action path. I call them action paths. I'm not sure if they have a specific technical name, but we need to do one more thing. We need to tell our library that we want to send this as JSON. Now, some people don't like to do things explicitly. They'd rather library implicitly do this stuff. But this was a design decision that I've decided, because if you support many, many different serialization strategies, you're not going to know implicitly which one someone might want to use when they provide a model that might be annotated with both JSON and protobuf attributes, protobufnet rather, like Mark Arval's protobufnet. So we need to say explicitly, use the JSON body. Now for responses, the content type is sent back in the response body, and we try to deserialize from that. So the library will implicitly try to do that. And there are headers you can send, which if you're familiar with HTTP, you'll know them, to try to force a specific content type. We're not going to get into that here. We want to just communicate So a lot of you seasoned .NET developers will probably be wondering, are we going to implement this interface now, and what do we do after that? Well, we're not doing that actually. It might seem a little weird, but thanks to Castle Core, we're able to do a little bit of magic here. And we want to call the REST Service Builder. That name might change because it doesn't necessarily have to be REST. I might just call it Web Service Builder, HTTP Service Builder. And there should be a static create method here. Let me check which version I have. That's been pushed. We have version 13. So that should be available now. Sorry, bear with me for just a second. That's very odd. This has been pushed up to NuGet as well, so... Well, in future builds, we'll have that available. I'm not sure why that's not on NuGet yet. So for now, we're just going to add the default serializers, which you should almost always do. However, we're actually not going to use them in this case. We're going to need a client implementation. Like I said, you can plug in different clients, and if you want different ones, go ahead and let me know by opening up an issue on the GitHub. And for clients, we usually need to provide the actual host path or URL. And we also need to enable JSON serialization. And then we build. So almost always, if you take a look, you're usually only going to be dealing with extension methods. Register is mostly for me or anyone who wants to implement a custom client or serializer. And of course, build is important because you'll need to actually build the service. So that's actually all we need to do. So let's just do a quick write line. Indicate that the service is built. Now let's go ahead and get the power level of Glader, which we're pretty sure is, oops, need to send a model, which we're pretty sure is over 9,000. And we'll go ahead and log out that when we get it. Glader's power level. And let's go ahead and compile this. Let me know in the comments if you think that this building and registration is too complex and if there's anything I could do to simplify it. Like I said, you don't have to implement this type, this interface. You don't have to actually do anything with the registers. You just have to call these, and as I expand the feature set, there'll be more of these. And all you have to do is annotate your interfaces, and you're basically communicating with the web server, assuming you run the application, which we're about to do. First, I need the web server to run. The port is already in use. Oh, I was running something from earlier. Now we've got that running. We want to go ahead and run this now, our console application. Now, I have not even done a test run for this, so I'm just hoping it's going to work. What's wrong here? Oh, this might be a fault. I think because this class is private, actually, dynamic proxy, which is part of Castle Core, is probably erring on the side of caution and not implementing private interfaces, which could potentially destabilize the runtime. Maybe. It definitely probably violates some sort of specification somewhere, so we're going to make that public. So try to never have your interfaces private or in private classes. So I'm pretty sure that that's the case. It's very weird. Hopefully, you know, we're encountering all sorts of interesting things. Let's see something a little bit more. Oh, we need to restart the web server. Over here you can see a previous demo. So we have the web server running. Service built. Something happened up there. And we received the model. But I accidentally logged the model. Because that's not the power level. Well, you see it works. I've just botched the demo. Our power level is power, and our identifier is, again, meaningless values, meaningless identifier. Go ahead and rebuild it. Alright, the web server is running. Let's go ahead and run the client now. And there you go. Glader's power level, 9001. And there's our random GUID ID. So you can now see that we've essentially communicated with the web server by adding this annotation or attribute, and this one as well, and that's really all. We've not had to do anything by hand, nothing manually. We don't even have to implement this interface, and I think that is the beauty of this library and the productivity it offers. So thanks for watching. I really hope you guys will give this library a chance. I think it is above the other competing libraries that do the same thing. I only know of one, maybe two in .NET. This one doesn't have a full feature parity just yet, but it has a much brighter future, in my opinion, after examining the internals of refit. And a lot of people, I think, are going to like this if they want to only include the attributes as a NuGet in some locations, for example, their models, and may want to swap out different serializers, which that's not allowed, or extend the serialization abilities, which is not allowed by refit, for example. So I think this library has a bright future, and I welcome anyone to use it or provide feedback. Thanks for watching, guys.